The Miami Hurricanes are still waiting for an answer from their final transfer portal target. What's the holdup?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Our Tyler Barron watch continues. Seemingly forever, it continues. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and co-host of Locked On ACC. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube, and we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. On this episode, we will discuss whether or not this is the best recruiting coaching staff that Mario Cristobal has had at Miami. We'll talk about a new accolade for Miami's top running back duo and how they compare to the rest of the ACC. But our Tyler Barron saga, it continues as we continue to wait for an answer from transfer portal defensive end. Most recently played at Tennessee, but was most recently enrolled at Louisville. Now, folks, for those of you who have been following the day-to-day, sometimes hour-to-hour on this, whether you're all over social media or you're a Locked On Canes insider or you're a member of any of the several Miami Hurricanes message boards and group chats, we've all seen a lot of buzz for the past several days from Miami fans and the social media insiders out there who repeatedly keep claiming just about every night that tonight is the night for Tyler Barron to Miami. People were bracing themselves for an announcement on Thursday that didn't come. Miami ended up landing a recruiting offensive lineman to Kalen Mew on Thursday. A lot of people thought that bat signal was going to be for Barron. I was, wondering about that myself. But Barron did not happen Thursday. Then Friday, tonight's the night. No, not Friday, Saturday it's happening. And then definitely on Sunday. So I'm sure Monday night we're going to be on high alert again. Now, if we take a step back with what's going on with Tyler Barron, we'll talk about how he could help Miami if he does end up committing to the Hurricanes. But to this point, nothing about Barron's process, since he decided to leave Louisville in April, nothing about his process has suggested to me that he's in any real rush to make a decision this time around. And the circumstances compared to this other player, they are different, but this saga is starting to remind me a lot of the Cam Ward situation. Now, I know what college football fans often feel is that usually when something kind of drags on for this long and you're waiting for an answer for this amount of weeks, that things don't usually work out. In Cam Ward's case, things did work out for Miami. And I think there is still a pretty good chance that things work out for Miami with Tyler Barron as well. But you got to consider some of the circumstances here. And my theory on possible reasons why it's taking this long for him to make up his mind. Okay, Tyler Barron, he has entered the transfer portal 3 separate times in his college career. He's about to enroll at a 4th different school by the time he picks his next destination, because even though the only program he's actually played for is Tennessee, but he also briefly enrolled at Ole Miss before transferring, briefly enrolled at Louisville before deciding to transfer again. So one thing is, this does make me wonder, and this is something that somebody did whisper to me a few weeks ago. It makes me wonder if there could be just some complications with his credits and transcripts transferring over to Miami because he's been at so many different schools. I wonder if there is something to that. And if it's not a transcripts issue, you got to remember, folks, just in terms of his decision and his family's decision, all that goes into this, he's got 1 season of eligibility left. And he's already changed his mind and transferred to so many different places. This time around, he's got to dot all of his I's. He's got to cross all of his T's, and he's got to make sure that his final decision, because this is likely to be the final school that he plays for and enrolls in, this final decision has to be the right one for him and his family, right? Obviously wants to have a chance to compete and play for a good roster, to be able to get good coaching and development for his final year. I believe Miami has that with Jason Taylor. I mean, to have a Pro Football Hall of Famer as your position coach for your final season, you could do a lot worse than that. And you want to be in the best possible position to be drafted into the NFL. And there's more than that, right? That also needs to find some of these I did cover, but you need to find the right football fit, the right culture fit, and of course, NIL is a big part of today's game. You got to find the best NIL fit as well, something you feel comfortable with. And something that I have said, and you guys who are everydayers of Locked On Canes, and for people who subscribe to our Locked On Canes Insiders chat, I've said this repeatedly, that Tyler Barron, throughout this process, he's had a lot of leverage, right? This really is a seller's market for him, because this is a very high-level defensive end, pass rusher, proven sacker of quarterbacks who's available, a guy who's going to be in the NFL, drafted in the NFL 11 months from now. And that's a premium position. You talk about someone who can sack quarterbacks, someone who's an NFL prospect on the edge. There haven't been many of those guys available at his level. He's the top guy available now. So he's the one who's had the leverage. A lot of schools have been after him. Now, since the middle part of last week, I have been of the belief that Miami is in the lead for Tyler Barron. I don't necessarily have any reason to believe that has changed. I know that late last week, there was a lot of buzz about LSU trying to make a late push, get in the mix for him. Things seem to have died down there at least a little bit. Ole Miss seems to have been riding in third place behind Miami and USC. So obviously, until he makes that final decision, there's always a chance that someone could overtake Miami. There's always a chance someone else could get into that race. I know that's something that concerns Miami fans. But I still think, in my humble opinion, I still think Miami is trending out in front on this one. I don't know if they're far in front or if they're just ahead of maybe USC here, but I still think Miami is trending in front. I know that, our guy Brian Smith always says this, the recruiting overlord, that Miami fans, we're not known for our patience, right? I mean, I don't know how many patient college football fan bases there are, but certainly Miami is not one of those. Now, this is a player, if Miami is able to land Tyler Barron, he absolutely can and would make this team better. You're talking about an edge rusher who's 6'5", 260 plus pounds. He's got 100 career tackles, had 5 sacks last year at Tennessee, 10.5 tackles for loss last year. Yeah, I talked about this a little bit last week. An NFL scout has said about Barron that he already has an NFL caliber spin move. He's got a 4.6 40-yard dash time on the record. So, if you could put him in a Miami edge rusher rotation along with Elijah Alston, who had tremendous grades coming out of Marshall from last year, Ruben Hurricane Bain, Akeem Mesidor, hoping and praying that he's fully healthy. I know he's recovered from his foot issue. He just needs those special shoes. I think Malik Bryant is someone changing positions this year, going from linebacker to the edge. I think he can absolutely make some noise this season. Miami's got some hungry, good young players, even behind Ruben Bain. Cole McConaughey is someone that I feel really good about. I mean, Booker Pickett Jr. is not even on campus yet. I think he's going to be a good one. Of course, you're going to be mixing in, a guy like Armando Blunt, who can play in the interior or on the edge. He's out there working out all day long. So I think Miami is in pretty good shape on the edge. Even if Tyler Barron doesn't come, call it a luxury pick if you want to. But the teams that compete for championships are usually teams that have luxuries of depth, because you got to remember, you're always just a couple of injuries away from needing that sort of depth. Okay. So Tyler Barron, if Miami can get him, is absolutely someone who makes this football team better. Oh, we have so much to talk about on this Monday episode of Locked On Canes. We got a fan. We're going to answer some questions from the Locked On Canes insiders. Someone who's concerned that a prominent member of the national college football media has he ranked Miami too high in his way too early top 25. We got a good question about Mario Cristobal's staff. Does he have the best group of recruiters around him since he's been at the University of Miami? And a cool accolade for Miami's top running back duo. Another reason why, people are pretty bullish on Miami, thinking that this is a team that can compete for some special things this coming season. We're only getting started, my friends, on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. And if you're a small business owner, I know you're keeping it locked to LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be on the market or open for a perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making this Monday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Hey, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV on the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So someone's a little bit concerned about this. Delane, and I get it, right? He says, hey, over the weekend, I was looking over some of the little too early rankings, the way too early rankings, and I saw where J.D. Piquel from On3 Sports had Miami at number 14, Delane said. He said, to most fans, that seems too high. Personally, we shouldn't be ranked at the beginning. What are your thoughts on it? So, Delane, sometimes when anyone from the media ranks Miami highly in the preseason or off season in this case, sometimes I feel like this is done with the agenda of trying to set Miami up to fail, right? That certain media members do this on purpose. Like, oh yeah, Miami's going to be great this year. And then a few months later, like, oh, how terrible are they? They were supposed to be the 14th ranked team in the country and they're not ranked. So that happens a lot. But this is a huge but here. J.D. Piquel from On3, he is legitimately high on what Miami is doing. I've spoken with him before. There's no agenda on JD's part. If J.D. Piquel tells you Miami's the 14th ranked team preseason, I'm not saying he's right necessarily, but that's his honest opinion. I don't believe there's any agenda or any bias that comes with that, because some things I know about JD's views on Miami. He's very high on Cam Ward, higher than most members of the media, because I think a lot of people just don't, maybe the fact that he played at Washington State, which wasn't on TV a whole lot, and they're not really paying attention to what happened in Miami in the spring, where I was at every spring practice. Cam Ward looked fantastic. I'm not accustomed to seeing quarterback play like that in Miami Hurricanes practices, because obviously quarterback has been a position where Miami has been lacking over the years. So Piquel, he's very high on Cam Ward, and he understands that Miami is building their team from the inside out with a strong emphasis on the line of scrimmage. And that's usually a recipe for success. So am I telling you, yeah, he's right, Miami's the 14th best team in the country? That's not what I'm saying. If it were up to me, and also, anyone who roots for Miami, we all have the battle scars. Like, we all have the PTSD over the years where, for the better part of the last 20 years, they have underperformed, not overperformed our expectations. So JD doesn't come in with that sort of baggage that we have. If it were up to me, I'd probably have Miami ranked like in the low 20s. So I'm not saying he's right about 14, but could they be the 14th or even 12th best team in the country with the type of roster that they're building, with Cam Ward and Damian Martinez and Xavier Restrepo and Ruben Bain and Kiko Maui-Noa, and I could go on and on and on. I could see a scenario where Miami could push for a college football playoff spot. Where I'm at is I've got to see it to believe it. I've got to see how they look against Florida. Got to see what they do mid-October against Florida State, which is the toughest game on the schedule, in my opinion. So, I'm not ready to anoint Miami, but I can tell you, as far as JD Piquel's preseason 14th ranking, that's not from any agenda. He's not a Miami fan, nor is he a Miami hater, and he is genuinely high on what Miami is building. So I respect his opinion on that. We get a question from Dat Dude 239 who says, "Hey Dono, I have a two-part question for you, and happy Monday if there is such a thing." He says, "But there is such a thing. I don't know if today's a happy Monday, but there have been happy Mondays." He says, "Question number one: over the past 10 years, what have been Miami's top 3 homegrown positions developed in the program?" And then question two: if we don't have any, do you believe that has been a part of Miami's lack of success? Okay, the way that I'm going to judge this, when you talk about top developed positions, I'm going to judge it based on who has gotten drafted into the NFL. Okay. And if you look at the positions of Miami players over the last 10 years that have been drafted in the NFL, I'd probably put tight end at the top of that list, given like the quality of players Miami has put into the NFL at that position. I would say not all these guys have panned out, but at defensive end, Miami has put a ton of players into the NFL the last 10 years, and then probably defensive back as well. Like at tight end, Miami within the last decade has put Clive Walford, David Njoku, Chris Herndon, Brevin Jordan, Will Mallory. They've all been drafted in recent years. There's been a lot of defensive ends taken, and I know like people will say, wait, not all these guys were developed. Some of these guys were transferred. Well, I mean, if Florida State fans can take credit for all of Norvell's transfers, you can allow me to entertain this for a second, because Miami has had, Jalen Phillips and Greg Rousseau drafted in recent years, Chad Thomas, Joe Jackson, Quincy Roche, Jonathan Garvin, Al-Qadim Muhammad, Anthony Chickolo. I might have missed a couple, but those are some of the DNs Miami's had drafted. Defensive backs. These are in not particular order of what years they played. This was just off my memory. Michael Jackson, Sheldrick Redwine, DJ Ivy, Tyreek Stevenson, Cam Kinchins, of course, Artie Burns, Deion Bush, Corn Elder, James Williams was just taken in the 7th round, Rayshon Jenkins. Not that, like, I know I listed off a bunch of players. Some of them are really good. Some of them are like, oh, I forgot he played here. So these are not Pro Football Hall of Famers or anything like that. Some of these players are really good, of course. But, if you look at the positions Miami has been putting players in the NFL, I would probably have those near the top. They've also had some notable wide receivers who have gone in, KJ Osborne, Braxton Berrios, to name a couple. But yeah, listen, development and recruiting for the better part of the last 10 years. I think Mario is turning the recruiting part of it around. But I think a big part of Miami's lack of success, to the second part of your question, Dat Dude, a lot of that comes from not having marquee quarterbacks here. Right. And I think it's twofold. I think it's not only have Miami, you tend to not get linked to blue chip recruits at quarterback. I think Luke Nickel is very good, and he's going to be one of those guys who can turn things around. Hopefully, Emory Williams and Judd Anderson, who are young guys in the program, can do the same thing. But Miami has not recruited well enough at quarterback, and they've probably not developed well enough there either. I mean, the only guy that they've had drafted at that position in the last over a decade was Brad Kaya, and it's not like he had any sort of an NFL career. So I think that's a big part of Miami's lack of success has come from not having or developing marquee quarterbacks, and also defensive tackles. I mean, you've had a few guys drafted, but you haven't had the volume of defensive tackles that championship caliber programs do. There also been some inconsistencies at linebacker. I mean, really in recent years, outside of Quarterman, Pinckney, and McLeod, there's not been enough there. A lot of undersized linebackers. That's something Mario Cristobal is trying to fix. Okay. But yeah, I think not enough really, really good quarterbacks and defensive tackles has been something that has kind of, stunted Miami's development as a quarterback, as a football team in recent years, I should say. We get a question from our guy BP who says, "Hey, Dono, what's going on with our 2023 recruited ambassador Antonio Tripp? We never hear about him, and he seemed like a solid prospect." Yeah, so Antonio, he's an interior offensive lineman who's heading into his second season at Miami coming up. I think just the case with Tripp, just someone he's got a great foundation and a great head on his shoulders and a great family. He works very hard. I just think, when he came in through recruiting last year, he's just someone who needs a little bit more development than, let's say CeCe Mauinoa and Samson Okunlola, or, who's the other one? Tommy Kinsler. I don't know why that name escaped me. Big Bruno, who I think those guys were just more physically ready for the next level. I think Antonio Tripp, I don't I think his development is going fine. It's just he takes a little bit more development than some of these other guys, and he's only heading into his second year. So it's not like, hey, it's year 3 or 4. What's going on with Tripp? I think Tripp's going to be fine. He works incredibly hard, and this is a player that the staff believed in when they recruited him, and at some point, we're going to see the fruits of his labor on the field. All right, so, oh, man. So we've got to talk about Miami's running back duo when we come back. Plus, is this the best recruiting staff in terms of assistant coaches that Mario Cristobal has had at Miami? We're not done yet, my friends. On this Monday, you want to keep it locked right here to this brand new Locked On Canes. Folks, FanDuel, this has been so much fun. I mean, I had money on the Indiana Pacers. They beat the Knicks yesterday. Thank you. I've been betting on my Florida Panthers throughout their postseason run in the NHL because it is winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers on FanDuel get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So this was cool. Pro Football Focus put out one of their graphics for the ACC for running backs. Now, Miami does not have a top 3 graded returning running back in the conference, but they do have 2 of the top 5. And I will take that, okay? The top 3 returning running backs in the conference per their Pro Football Focus ratings from last year are Pittsburgh's Desmond Reed, UNC's Amarian Hampton, who is incredible, and Cal's Jaden Ott is also an incredible back. So even though you might be saying, man, they're disrespecting Damian Martinez or they're disrespecting Mark Fletcher, Miami's got 2 of the top 5. No other school has that because they have Mark Fletcher, based on his overall grade from last year, ranked 4th with an 84.2 Pro Football Focus rating, followed immediately by Damian Martinez at number 5 with an 83.1 PFF rating from last year. I actually expected Martinez to be ranked a little bit higher. Martinez, remember last year, rushed for just under 1,200 yards, 9 rushing touchdowns last season, 6.1 yards per carry each of the past 2 years. He's 237 pounds. I think Martinez he's going to be right up there, top 3 running back in the ACC. Like I consider probably the other 2 top 3 guys, in my opinion, are Ott from Cal and Hampton from UNC. I think Martinez is going to be right there in that conversation. And then Mark Fletcher, as soon as he's healthy enough to be full go, maybe it's going to be week 1, maybe it's not. But as soon as Fletcher's going to be healthy again, I think he's going to benefit from being in a tandem alongside Martinez. You're going to have just dueling battering rams. You're going to have Martinez wearing down defenses and then Fletcher subbing in and wearing down defense. These are both really, really big, strong running backs. Miami also has, I'm not discounting the other backs, right? It's not just a duo for Miami, right? When you also have Chris Johnson and A.J. Allen and Elijah Lofton, if you need him to play running back, he's already shown you he can do that. He got a lot of reps at running back during the spring to the true freshman tight end. And you've got a couple of freshmen. Jordan Lyle, I think he just moved into campus over the weekend from St. Thomas Aquinas. So did Chance Robinson at receiver, by the way. Chance Robinson, he looks physically ready. Like Robinson, he's about 6'2", maybe 215, 220. Like he looks physically ready to go out there. I can't wait to see him practice now that he's enrolled. Miami also has young Chris Wheatley-Humphrey at running back. So they got some dudes at running back. But if everybody's healthy, I think the top duo at the top of that rotation are going to be Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher. And for Miami, yeah, having 2 of the top 5 graded guys playing the same position in the conference, that's the sort of luxury. It's going to help you play Mario ball. It's going to help you bully. It's going to help you wear down defenses. And it's going to open things up for Cam Ward and that passing game. So having 2 of the top 5 graded returning running backs in the conference, that's going to be a big blessing for Miami this year. We get a question from, I don't know who this is from, but we get a question from our Locked On Canes Insiders chat that says, hey, since Mario has been here, is this the best set of recruiting coaches that he has had in terms of his assistants? I think a question mark will be, I need more data on Matt Merritt as a recruiter and Chevis Jackson, since these guys are both really new here. Now maybe Chevis Jackson is a recruiting upgrade over Jamil Adai. Jamil Adai was a really good developer, but I know that there were some times where it seemed like he would fall behind a little bit just from a high school recruiting standpoint. He might argue that point, but I'm just basing it on some of the players that he missed out on over the last couple of years. So I think the jury is still out there. Chevis Jackson, Coach Jackson has a great opportunity when it comes to trying to land players like DJ Pickett and Chris Ewald. Like, he's got a great chance to formulate that narrative. Same thing with Matt Merritt, the new running backs coach, because Tim Harris, who he replaced, was a really good recruiter. He's done that repeatedly throughout the state of Florida. Now, Coach Merritt has already landed Gerard Pringle at running back, which is a good get. But we'll have the jury's still out on those guys. But with the rest of the staff, Cody Woodall, the tight ends coach, I'm blown away by what he's doing from a recruiting standpoint. Having already landed verbal commitments from Brock Schott and Luca Gilbert in his position group, Cody Woodall is crushing it. Kevin Beard just crushed it in the last cycle and is going to try to do it again in this cycle. Miami already does have Wade and Charles committed, and they've got some big fish that they're after, like Dallas Wilson and Jamie French and Cortez Mills and Vernell Brown. They're in the top four. So, I mean, Kevin Beard has proven his recruiting chops over and over and over again. Alex Mirabal has shown those over and over and over again. Jason Taylor, look what he did in the last cycle. I mean, Marquise Lightfoot, Justin Scott, and obviously Joe Salavea is a part of that as well. So, this is, I think the jury is still out onto whether this year's staff is definitely a better recruiting staff than last year. But when it comes to 2 years ago, when Mario first got here, there is no question. Mario Cristobal has had the opportunity over the last couple of off seasons to make some changes and tweaks to the coaching staff and to the backroom support staff as well. I think feels like he has a good mix there. We give a lot of credit to guys like Dennis Smith and Steven Scrum and Stephen Field, who do so much recruiting work behind the scenes. They feel like they have a good mix there. But yeah, Cristobal has had the last couple of off seasons to really tweak and organize his staff, because if you're going to work for Mario Cristobal, you have to be a tireless, energetic recruiter. You don't have a whole lot of time to sleep. That's just how he builds a staff. And I think he does have a really, really good mix there with what he has now on the staff. We get a question from ND Hater 85, who says, hey, if you were doing a draft with 5 other Miami fans to make your best Miami team of all time, and you're picking first, who are you taking? Man, so if I have a number 1 overall pick and an all-time great Miami Hurricanes team, I may have a different answer depending on what kind of mood I'm in, but Ed Reed, number 1 overall, I'd probably go with him. I know that there are definitely some options there. You know, Sean Taylor, may he rest in peace, would also be a strong option. Ray Lewis, like, there are plenty of options out there. Michael Irvin, the playmaker, any of Miami's great defensive tackles over the years. My goodness. But Ed, I don't know, man. I'm feeling Ed Reed. I think maybe the best overall, Miami player, with what he did here combined with what he did in the pros. That may be the guy that I go with. Let's see. Oh, by the way, I want to send a couple of shout outs here. Shout outs to Ruben Bain and Armando Blunt, 2 former Miami Central defensive linemen who are Miami Hurricanes now. I want to give these guys a shout out because both Bain and Blunt, these guys both over the weekend have sent out these social media posts with their off-season workouts. These guys are crushing it, and they're working harder than people realize. They are not slowing down, despite the fact that Miami isn't currently having full team practices. Ruben Bain, he's doing midnight workouts. Guys, I go to sleep at 10 o'clock, and at midnight, Ruben Bain's out there running gassers and pushing sleds. It's crazy. Armando Blunt, he posted out his pre-summer workout schedule. He runs a mile a day, does 100 push-ups a day, 30 planks. He does track drills, and he's out there crushing it. And I know Armando had a minor injury issue that caused him he couldn't practice in full during spring. So it seems good now, but he is chomping at the bit to get out there for fall camp. And folks, I couldn't possibly go through this episode without sending my thoughts and prayers to the family of Jim Otto and saying rest in peace, R.I.P. Jim Otto. He just passed away at 86 years old. Legendary former Miami Hurricane and Oakland Raider. When it comes to the Hurricanes, you could argue Jim Otto was the OG. It's before my time, of course, but this was the first Miami Hurricane to be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Played center and linebacker at Miami, played center in the NFL, was a great all-time Oakland Raider. This is a statement that the Raiders sent out. The Raiders family is in deep mourning following the passing of Jim Otto, the original Raider, they call him. The personification of consistency. Jim's influence on the American Football League and professional football as a whole cannot be overstated. His leadership and tenacity were a hallmark of the dominant Raider teams of the 1960s and 70s. So OG Kane, the original Raider, for his family, I want to send out my heartfelt wishes and prayers. I will be praying for you. Losing a loved one, losing a great man like Jim, I know is an awful, awful thing. I'm so sorry he passed away, but his legacy, his memory will live on. The OG Miami Hurricane. All right, guys, thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We are free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow on a brand new episode of Locked On Canes.